It's been around 2 months since Cadence of Hyrule was announced, and... yeah, Nintendo's been a bit quiet, especially as the game could be launching any day now, and that's solidified even further by an Indie World highlight video, where not only is Cadence of Hyrule given a release window of June, but we saw a whole new 40 seconds of gameplay. So we've called in the help of the old analysis machine to find out what secrets and hidden details might be hiding. Now, we're not going to go too crazy, because a lot of these areas and enemies did appear in the game's debut trailer, but this is our first time seeing untouched gameplay with the HUD fully implemented. Well, in motion at least. The mobile version of the website actually showcased a few in-game screenshots beforehand. So as we can see, Cadence of Hyrule has a classic Zelda HUD, somewhat in the style of Ocarina of Time. You've got your hearts and magic meter, 4 item slots, sub-items, rupees, keys and diamonds, and finally this little meter at the bottom keeping track of your beats. See, the way that Crypto the Necrodancer works is you can only move on every musical beat, and this gauge here is the visual representation of that. It will get more intense with consecutive combos, which in Crypto the Necrodancer would multiply your money, and the same is probably true here. Now what are the diamonds? Well, in Crypt they can be used outside of levels to purchase equipment before going back in. Levels in both Crypt and Cadence are randomly generated, so this is your way of building up your character rather than starting from scratch. You may also notice another thing about the visuals that weren't present in the game's debut trailer, and that's these tiles. Yeah, they're in Crypt of the Necrodancer too. Movement is tile-based, so this basically shows where both you and enemies can and can't go. Anyway, enough about what the game is, because I'm sure most of you know by now. What is new in this trailer? Well, it starts off with a classic shot of Link cutting down grass with a short Kokiri-style sword. Later in the trailer, it's revealed that hidden passageways can lurk under the grass, just like in other 2D Zelda games, and we also imagine you can find hearts, rupees, and other items by cutting grass down. There's also pots in this game, which probably have a higher chance of having items inside them. And hey, what's that over there? Yeah, that's our very first look at cuckoos in Cadence of Hyrule, and we have to imagine that beating them down is gonna unleash a swarm, but will they abide by some kind of musical rhythm too? And hey, how did Link get up here? Well, we can see him jumping from this little island of hill to a grey platform to another hill. But seeing as we can see the ridge of the first platform over here, Link most likely climbed up these stairs, along this boulder, over this green-headed platform, and over here. That or there's some other way of getting up just off screen. If the former is the case though, then Cadence may have some interesting puzzle platforming elements to overcome. There's not a great deal more going on in this scene though. There's a Sheikah door, which you can seemingly speak to going by another scene, and there's a small cave just down here. Seeming as Link has a fairly weak sword and there's no enemies around, maybe we even collect our sword from here just like in Zelda 1. Alright, now onto combat. Link has a spear here which allows him to hit enemies that are 2 spaces away. We can see 2 Lizalfos, 1 green and 1 red, 2 Bokoblins, 1 green and 1 blue, a blue Puffstool, and a green Chew. Now Chews are the exact same as slimes in Crypt of the Necrodancer. The green ones don't move, while the blue ones jump back and forth. Although we do see they actually split in half after hitting them, making them a bit more menacing. In fact, most enemies in Cadence seem to have some kind of connection with the Crypt of the Necrodancer monster. For instance, Puffstools are just crypt mushrooms, even coming in both blue and purple variants. As for what the Lizalfos and Bokoblins mirror, it's not immediately evident. They could even be unique designs. Either way, their actual character designs are heavily influenced by Breath of the Wild. The green Lizalfos goes down in 1 hit, while the red one takes 2, with the first hit disarming them. Though depending on whether this first hit registers, the blue Bokoblin may take 3 hits, though we imagine the green Bokoblin will go down in just 1, just like the green Lizalfos. Also, notice how the Bokoblin dance around before their imminent doom. And hey, what's that over there? Well, this is likely a launch pad as seen in Crypt of the Necrodancer, where if you or an enemy jumps on it, they'll be flung in that direction. Alright, and on to the next scene, and maybe I'm crazy, but this reminds me a lot of the Far East portion of the original NES Zelda. The beach and coastline have a very distinct look. Anyway, it seems that Link may have been sniping a few enemies. There's a trail of rupees right here with an Octorok bouncing towards him. This game really is all about rhythm, as even the Octorok's rocks will magically float in a beat. And it seems there may be another one just off screen, just that tiny pixel right there. We also see a yellow Octorok which requires 2 hits to take down. Otherwise all that's left here are 2 Lizalfos, though this one is blue, likely needing 3 hits to take down. Alright, onto the forest where we get our first look at the game fully panned out. While we've already gone over the HUD, it couldn't hurt to see what items Link's carrying. The primary 4 items consist of a bow with 10 arrows, a hookshot, a feather which probably allows Link to jump, and a lute as seen in the game's logo. As for what the lute does, your guess is as good as mine. Now Link also has a small shield, and this item over here occurs a lot over the course of the trailer, and I can't quite make out what it's meant to be. Otherwise, we can see the automatic items. There's a longsword, a shovel, a torch, and some kind of bracelet, likely increasing your power or defense. Now we can also see the screen scrolls just like in other Zelda games, and it's unlikely enemies can follow you along here. Alrighty, now here's a field very reminiscent of A Link to the Past. There's statues with Triforce logos scattered around everywhere. They kinda resemble sages or maidens, so maybe that's a hint to the game's story. Are we trying to save them so they can grant us their help? Anyway, we get a better look at the castle guards from the first trailer, and we can see they can wield both swords and a bow. They come in different colours, but the movement patterns are exactly the same. Much like the green shoes, the blue ones also split into two, though remember, these ones are bouncy boys. And hey, this seems to take place pretty early on in the level. Link has 3 hearts, 0 keys, 0 rupees, and rather basic items. Although he does have 12 diamonds, which is probably why he has a spear and a bow already. Though the glove and empty bottle are certainly interesting. It's likely a power glove, perhaps giving you more offensive power, or maybe you need it to push boulders around. And I guess we can bottle up items like fairies and water in the empty bottle? We don't see any instance of it, but it's certainly possible. Alright, and onto the desert, and nothing huge is really going on here. We do get a look at electric keys, so watch out for those flappy fellas. But more importantly, Link has a Deku Leaf. We'll probably be able to blow things around with this just like in Breath of the Wild, but whether it has much combat utility is rather unlikely. We can also see that Link has some boots which are nearly depleted in power. These probably just give Link more armor. And hey, can you make out what this is over here? It appears to be a mace, which is a first for a Zelda item. We can even see it in action just over here. As we can move forward, we can see 2 new enemies, being the Tactile and also a lever, which buries out from under the ground. Back in the forest, we can see a few things just lying around, and with how armed Link is, it's likely he's taken out a few enemies who have dropped these. There's a spear, rupees, and bombs. Also a cute little harmless doggy who was in the debut trailer. Aww. As Link cuts down a patch of grass and enters a hidden passage, we bump into a stone Talos from Breath of the Wild. These guys telegraph their attacks and hit on a wide range, and it seems to do quite a bit of damage with Link losing 2 hearts. We're also joined by a Wizrobe, although we don't actually see them attack. And hey, does that chest look familiar? It looks remarkably like the ones from Outposts in Breath of the Wild. If it works like that game, then it's going to unlock once all the enemies in the room have been defeated. And next, Link's taking on a few armored Stalfos, and he's armed to the teeth. Almost maxed out on hearts, 16 keys, a powered up sword, and a bunch of items we haven't seen before. There's a boomerang, a cane, which could very well be the cane of Reiner and grant Link temporary invincibility. Or it could be like the cane from Minish Cap and just flip things around. And then there's these 2, which appear to be other instruments. The left one could very well be a tambourine, while the bottom one may be a pair of cymbals. Though we can't help but see a face staring at us. It's kind of unnerving. As for what they're going to do in the game, it's not so clear. Alright, we're getting towards the end. We're now in some kind of ice dungeon with an icy doggy, a Wizrobe, a Keys, Beamos, and what may be a Beery from Ocarina of Time. These guys move diagonally, so they're rather hard to predict. And there's even more items here with a Bomb Chew and what may be a Fire Rod. And Link even seems to have found a dungeon map. Alright, time for some Zelda action. Zelda's HUD is mostly the same as Link's, apart from instead of a shield, she has some kind of crystal. Also notice her magic meter is purple instead of green. Now this could be one of Din's Fire, Farore's Wind, and Nehru's Love, as we did see Zelda use some of these in the debut trailer. With just being a pure crystal, we think this one's Nehru's Love. There's nothing really more going on in this scene, though there is an arrow pointing to the top left. Perhaps Zelda found an item that points out the exit, or maybe she found it already and has gone off exploring. We then see Zelda using Din's Fire, which takes out multiple enemies at once, and a few pots. One of the pots was hiding a key, while one of the enemies drops a shovel. And hey, remember these guys from Link to the Past? They're dead rocks and turn to stone once you hit them. Alright, and as we close off, we got our first look at co-op in Cadence of Hyrule, with both Link and Zelda being on screen at the same time. And they appear to be fighting a Zelda 1 and Ocarina of Time boss, a Gohma, complete with little Gohma lava. Aww. Though this isn't any Gohma, it is armed with a pair of Maracas. So I guess we call it a Gohmaka? Whatever it is, it shoots a giant laser out of its eye, kinda similar to the fireballs in Zelda 1. And finally we see Link picking up a flute and holding it above his head in classic Zelda style. Obtaining these instruments clearly plays a large role in the game, but what do they do? We've seen a few in Link's inventories, they must serve a gameplay purpose, but they're also likely a big part of progression too. And that's everything we picked up in the 40 seconds of Cadence of Hyrule. The game's looking really solid, and as someone who loved Crypt of the Necrodancer, I can't wait to see how this pans out. There's still a few unknowns like what all the instruments do and what the story is behind this game, though I guess we'll find out fairly soon, as it will be launching in just a matter of weeks. So what do you guys think about Cadence of Hyrule so far? Let us know down below, and of course be sure to subscribe to GameXplain for a lot more on Cadence of Hyrule and other things gaming too. Until next time, bye.